Short sale. This is kind of the buzzwords right now, short sale. Everybody's doing a short sale. And what is a short sale? It just means that you're selling the property for less than what's owed. And for most of us, that's where we're at right now. You know, your property is worth less. Let's go to the next slide. Here's an example. All right, first mortgage, $200,000 first. You have a $50,000 second. House is only worth $175,000. This is very typical of what I see every day, if not worse than this, okay? So the idea is that you go out and you sell the property for $175,000. But to do that, you have to get the lender's approval to do that because they essentially own the house. And so you have to get them to say, okay, you can sell it, and then we're going to let you sell it, and then we get the proceeds. Generally, the second's going to get some very small amount, $3,000, $4,000 of that, and then the mortgage, the first will get the rest of it. Again, because the first is in the better position. The second, if this goes through foreclosure, second gets nothing, and they know that. And so they're like, oh, okay, well, we'll take $3,000, go away. So that's how a short sale works. Sounds great, right? There are some problems with the short sales. All right, let's go to the next slide. Let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages. Advantages that it avoids foreclosure. It may prevent the deficiency from the lender coming after you. The disadvantages, and this is my big problem, is there are potential tax advantages from doing the short sale. And then it may not prevent the deficiency too. And that's something we want to talk about. Let's go to the next slide. All right, avoids foreclosure. And this is, you're going to hear this a lot. It may have a smaller impact on your scores, on your credit, if you do a short sale versus doing the foreclosure, okay? Because you don't have the public record. There's a public record section on credit reports that says foreclosure. That will pull your scores down. So you won't have that if you do either the short sale or the deed in lieu, okay? But it's not without its cost. The credit bureaus will treat a short sale as a settled debt. And again, if you've ever had any experience in this area, if you've got some credit cards that you owe $15,000 on and you say, hey, I'll pay you $5,000 instead, and they say, great, they take the $5,000, that $10,000 is treated as a settled debt for your credit report. And that's the same thing that happens with a short sale. So it's still going to ding your credit, not quite as bad as the foreclosure, but there is a cost to it, okay? Now, here's the other thing you're going to hear too, is it may allow you to qualify for a new mortgage much quicker if you do the short sale versus having the foreclosure go through, all right? Now, for instance, conventional lenders generally will allow you, and it depends on the lender, but generally within 2 years after the short sale, you can qualify for a mortgage again. So again, they're still dinging you for doing it, but it's 5 years for foreclosure and maybe longer. All right, so conventional lender, you know, not FHA, not the VA, it's a regular conventional loan that most people are aware of. The FHA, on a case-by-case basis, is essentially treating short sales as foreclosures, 2 years, 3 years for the FHA. So you don't get much of a benefit from FHA, but you certainly get one from conventional lenders. So again, that's an advantage. So if you're thinking down the road, I want to buy another house, it may be to your benefit to do the short sale instead of the foreclosure. Next slide. All right. Deficiency. Remember I said before, like with the deed in lieu, the primary goal of a short sale should be to get both lenders, if there's two, like the first and the second, or whatever lender's on there, to agree to not pursue you for a deficiency. Because you don't, and I guarantee you, if you don't do the short sale and get that agreement, and there's a second mortgage company, they are coming after you. They are going to sue you personally, maybe a year after the foreclosure or after the transaction, but they're coming after you. And if it's a $50,000 second, what are you going to do? I mean, you'll have a judgment for $50,000 and they're going to start doing bad things to you. So absolutely must get an agreement from them that they're going to not pursue you for deficiency, or have a plan that you're going to do a bankruptcy anyway, and then you don't care. But, you know, again, I'm seeing the last couple months, I've seen several come across my desk where the lender's like, well, we'll let you do the short sale, but we're going to reserve our right to pursue the deficiency. No. How about no? You get nothing if we go through the foreclosure. You get zero How about taking $3,000 or $4,000 instead, and then you don't come after us, you know? And if you come after us, we're gonna file bankruptcy anyway. Sometimes that helps when I do it, because I'm calling, you know, I'm a bankruptcy attorney. We're gonna file bankruptcy if you don't do this deal. And I'm not using that as blackmail. That's what we're gonna do. All right, so don't be very careful about signing these short sales unless they're gonna let you get off the hook, okay? Next slide. Here's my big problem with short sales. The tax implications that can come from doing a short sale. And I find that sometimes the people who are doing short sales, they kind of gloss over this whole thing. Oh, no, you'll be fine. Until you get the 1099 where you owe $50,000 extra because you had a short sale, all right? Now let's talk about that. The Internal Revenue Service treats most canceled debt as income. So when I talked before about the $15,000 credit card example and you settle it for $5,000, you're gonna get a 1099 from the credit card company for $10,000 because that forgiven debt is treated as income by the IRS, okay? And you gotta pay taxes on that. And depending on what your tax bracket is, that may be a significant hit. Same thing happens potentially when you do a short sale, all right? So let's go to our next slide. The short sale example we did before, right? You had a $200,000 first mortgage, you had a $50,000 second, and the house is worth $175,000. So let's say you sell it for $175,000 at a short sale, but you owe $250,000. And so theoretically, that $75,000 is treated as taxable income. And so you're like, hey, short sale, that sounds great. I'm gonna avoid the foreclosure. You know, I can get me another house in a few years. Let's do it. But then you get a 1099 for $75,000. You're like, whoa, you know, that might have doubled or tripled your income, and now you got a big old tax liability, you know? So that's a problem. Be very careful about that. But let me show you how to get around that. Next slide. There are 3 exceptions to this issue. And the first one is what's called the Mortgage Debt Relief Act of 2007. Now you're gonna hear this from people who are helping you with your short sale. They're gonna say, well, no, Congress passed this law in 2007 that says that if it's your primary residence, you don't get taxed on it. I can't tell you how many realtors I've had in my office with me with our joint clients saying, no, that's okay. No, it's not. Because there are exceptions to this, okay? And there are important exceptions to this. Let's go to the next slide. First of all, it has to be your primary residence, your principal residence. It can't be an investment property. It can't be a second home. Many of my clients have multiple properties, trying to do short sales on multiple properties, which clearly they don't own all of them as their principal residence. So first of all, it has to be your principal residence. If it's not, it's taxable, all right? And the second thing is, and this is where everybody falls down, the debt has to be what I call acquisition debt, which means it has to be used to acquire, purchase the property, construct the property, or substantially improve the property. So if you get a refinance, you get a second mortgage, and you're putting a pool in, or you're putting a new roof on, or you're redoing your kitchen, that's all okay. So if it's your principal residence, and you're using it for those purposes, then there is no tax on it. It's an exclusion because of this act. But if it's not, then you're in trouble. For instance, going back to our example before, all right? $250,000, right? We have let's go back one more. All right, $200,000 first mortgage, the $50,000 second, and the sale price of $175,000. Let's say the $200,000 is the original acquisition mortgage. That's what you use to purchase the property with. And then later on, you got the $50,000 second, but you use that to buy a new car, pay for college education, pay down some credit cards, go around a trip in the world. You know, you did a variety of stuff with it, but nothing for the house, all right? So if you go to sell this property at a short sale for $175,000, the $200,000 is okay. That's okay. That's exempt because it's acquisition debt. The $50,000 is not. So when you get the 1099 from the mortgage company because you did the short sale, that's $50,000 of income because you did the short sale. Again, depending on what your income bracket is, that could be a problem, all right? So be very careful about that. If you fall in those categories, great. Do the short sale. There's no problem. I think it's great. And I have advised many of my clients to do the short sales. Sometimes even if they are going to get hit with a tax liability because that's their only debt. And it doesn't make sense to put them in a bankruptcy or do anything else just because they have a little tax liability. They'd rather pay, $5,000 or $10,000 in tax than have the bankruptcy. So it just depends on a case-by-case basis. But don't just jump on the short sale bandwagon thinking it's all great, because sometimes it's not. Right? Let's go to the next slide. All right. Apart from that exclusion with that act, you can also get out of the tax problem by filing bankruptcy or by being insolvent before you did the short sale. There's no clear case law on this, but this is my belief and the belief of others who do this, that you have to file the bankruptcy if you're going to do it prior to doing the short sale. Because once the bank or the mortgage company has forgiven the debt, then it's taxable income. If you discharge your debt prior to it being forgiven, there's no tax liability. Okay, because the bankruptcy code has a provision in it that wipes out the IRS code's provision about taxable income. So that's one way of doing it. Now, sometimes I'll have someone come in and say, gosh, I really like my realtor. He's done a really great job for me, and I hate for him to miss out on the commission. He spent a lot of time. Okay, let's file a bankruptcy, and then you can still do the short sale. That works. That way everybody's happy. I like to be happy and work with everybody, but I'm primarily concerned about my clients. Okay, so think about that. The other is insolvency. If you get that 1099 from the IRS, there's a form that you can file along with your tax return that says, well, yeah, I know this happened, but I was insolvent at the time that it happened. And the IRS uses a very simple test for insolvency, which is your liabilities exceed your assets. And nowadays, that's pretty much everybody. Because we used to have all the equity in the house, and that was all our big asset. But now that would cover most people. So you may not have to file a bankruptcy if your liabilities exceeded your assets at the time that you filed, which may well be true. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. Final strategy, and this is for letting it go. If everything else that you've tried, which we're going to talk about in the next few slides, has failed, you just can't do a modification, you can't do a refinance, you can't do anything, it's going to happen. You're going to get the foreclosure, okay? If you have a small deficiency anyway, let's say you're all just about break even, let it go. You can't do you can't find someone to do a short sale, you can't get it done, all right, let it go. Or if we're going to do the bankruptcy anyway at some point and you don't really, we'll do the foreclosure, do the bankruptcy, we solve all your problems at once, let it go. At the end of the day, the bank has to get it back somehow, and that's the process for letting it go.